what was it before? It was just
It was, well, there used to be a dam in here.
okay.
And CCC in 37 built the dam. They had plans, basically it was Lake Sherman. On the forest maps it's still called Lake Sherman up here.
Okay.
And they had built it as a recreation lake. So they put in the dam, and then they had a lake that was built that came up from that, from the impounded water. So we've got plans, the original plans, that the regional office was going to put in a bathhouse, changing house, which is what this is.
Oh, okay.
They were going to have toilets, swimming area, deep swimming area with a little boat dock for rowboats or canoes or that kind of stuff. And so then in 39 or around 39, they built this. This was the first structure they were going to build for the changing house, for the whole lake. After 39, they probably finished it, who knows when they finished it, but after 39, at that point, the Forest Service kind of abandoned this project, and I think probably what was happening is the Forest Service was shifting their effort back to the war effort, because they knew that was coming down the pike, because by 39, in Europe, it was already war. And so it sat there, and then they extended, the state rerouted Highway 20, and when they rerouted it, the lake just silted in. By the late 40s, it was marshland. It was no longer a lake.
Yeah.
And after the war, there was no effort put back into it because it wasn't a lake anymore, so they stopped doing that.
About 3.
And so this thing sat until late 90s, and we've got some photos of, those are the old inlet gates, the concrete pieces of where the drop inlet was.
Yeah.
That dropped it down into the culvert for the other side of the dam. That was clogged up and almost overflowed in the floods of the late 90s. I think it was like 98. And so in the early 2000s, the forest made an effort to do a NEPA to have the dam removed for a couple of reasons. One is safety, for downstream safety, and the other reason, of course, was for fish habitat.
Was it an earth dam?
Yes, earth-filled dam. So over the last 2 years, our fish biologist for the west zone of the forest got an Air Force Reserve out here with their heavy equipment. In the first year, they removed all of the silt and they rerouted a portion of the creek itself. They also had a diversion culvert that they installed that ran along the far side of the creek. And then last year they came back out, physically removed the dam, and then pulled the diversion and let the water flow naturally again. So now they're trying to revegetate. This has been sitting out there in that alder and brush forever, and we don't know when, but at some point in time, an old cottonwood out there collapsed and collapsed onto the roof, shifted part of the roof out and away, and so the thing was sitting there just disabused and not used or anything else. Along this path here, we're going to have, as part of the mitigations that we worked out with State Historic Preservation Office, we're going to have a number of interpretive signs about what used to be here, why the dam was removed, all of those types of things. And so we made a determination. I worked with the recreation group and I said, we're going to restore this building, rehabilitate it, but what we need to do is determine, do we want to rehabilitate it in place and make a path that's a quarter mile up the creek for people to travel up to visit it, or should we move it down here? And basically the forest decided they'd prefer to move it down here. It's a site that's visited regularly, but it's also visited pretty regularly by our own Forest Service folks. We keep an eye on it. And so then I went through the process of the environmental assessment and worked with the State Historic Preservation Office. The building itself is eligible to the National Register. Moving the building didn't remove any of the characteristics that make it eligible.
Oh, there it is. I'm on, sorry. I thought I lost my battery.
So
how much is original here? Is the whole base of it?
All the base except these
Right.
outside little sills.
Right.
One of the cross beams, which when the tree fell on it and collapsed it, which it collapsed from the side where Stuart's standing with the orange hat, That one was exposed and it rotted out. All the rest of the cross beams are original. That gable end is original.
Yeah.
All of the posts are original. All of these log courses, in the interior, everything's original as well. And then what'll be new are the ceiling boards that we've already put in there. And we've got some of the old rafters. The rest of them we'll put in new rafter poles. And all our nailers and shake will be new. But it's due for a new roof anyhow.
Yeah.
So pretty much everything from this point up will be new. But we were able to salvage as much as we possibly could of the original to maintain that character. And what's interesting is that during the spring, in fact, we had such a late spring this year that over the last month when we were working on taking this apart, I had to put out a whole bunch of these 2x10s and 5/8 inch plywood to make a walkway for us over the water. It was just completely wet. All of the bottom logs were sitting in water when we were taking it apart. But interestingly enough, over time, except for these shorter little sill logs, the ones that sat right in the water, everything else survived really well. We've got some rot on some of the logs. Some of them we patched up. You can see the patch here. But we brought out some borate treatment that keeps it from further deteriorating. So we'll treat everything with the penetrate borate solution. So then our hope is it sits around for another 75 years. Of course, it'll probably need a roof replaced in the next 20 to 30.
Yeah.
But so yeah, I have a combination of seasonal crew that I hire. Stuart's the zone archaeologist for the West Zone who works out of Republic, and the rest of these folks are all students, all archaeology students, but we put them to work in historic preservation as well. And then we have volunteers. Two gentlemen inside are volunteers, Beverly, and I don't know where Gordon went, but he's up on the roof someplace. All volunteers through our Passport in Time program. So there's guys behind us. And so we had Beverly and Gordon were here last week. We had a different volunteer here last week. Next week we got Beverly and Gordon again and 2 other volunteers showing up. And hopefully next week we'll have the roof structure built and at a minimum start putting the roof shake on. And then once that's done, I pretty much hand it over to the Ranger District, and the Ranger District will take care of maintaining it. Sometime later this summer we expect to get our interpretive signs in, and there'll be a sign that's facing this structure that'll explain what the structure was, and pretty much what I explained to you, that it was the original bathhouse changing house that was part of the broader plans to build a number of things. In fact, where the Sherman Lake ended, they had plans to put recreation residences a little further up the creek. So they had some big, broad recreation plans for this area, which is why they built the dam.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, things happen, and over time, things change as far as determination of what the priorities are, and recreation kind of fell away during the war, clearly. So.
And interesting that the highway kind of took away the lake. It's fascinating.
What's really actually interesting is we've got historic letters from the forest supervisor for the forest to the state stating that they did not want the highway placed there, that they should reroute the highway more along the old stage trail, which is a little further to the north. But the state basically said, sorry, we're going to do what we want to do, and so they put the highway in and it silted it in. Yeah, it would have been real interesting if they'd say reroute the Highway 20 from here back to over this line of trees. It's another flat, a ridge line, and routed it far enough away from this lake. There could very well still be a dam and a lake and a bunch of recreation going on here, but it's the way of it.
All right. Thanks for sharing.
Sure.